Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Torrance City Council Workshop. We're going to get started now. I'm calling the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilmember Ashcraft?
Here.
Councilmember Goodrich?
Here.
Councilmember Griffiths?
Here.
Councilmember Herring?
Here.
Councilmember Rizzo?
Here.
Councilmember Wiedemann?
Here.
And Mayor Fury.
Here. The next part will be our flag salute led by Councilmember Wiedemann and an invocation by Councilwoman Ashcraft. Please stand.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we bow our heads together, we're grateful for the men and women of our police and fire departments and the military who work each day to keep us safe and free. We're thankful to have the opportunity to come together here this morning to discuss the issues concerning the refinery. As we take time to learn, listen, and discuss, I pray that the spirit of discernment will be with us today. Amen.
Before we get started, obviously today is a Saturday morning. The agenda posted says that we will be done by noon. It is my hope that we will actually be done today by 11. And I'm not kidding, because everybody here has other things that they have to do in their lives. What I will propose, and I will ask my colleagues for a concurrence on it, when we do adjourn this meeting, we can adjourn this meeting to a workshop, a continued workshop on this, on a date specific. My proposal would be Tuesday, September 19th at 5 o'clock p.m. in the Torrance City Council chambers. The reason that we're doing this as a workshop, I think everybody will recall that we've done a number of these as part of our city council meetings. And everybody knows the refinery and all of that is a very important thing to us. But the city of Torrance has a lot of important things that we have to address. And I recall one night we did a workshop, and we didn't get to the city council meeting until 10:30 at night. And that was unfair for all the people who were there for those issues. So what I'm proposing is we will do this at 5 o'clock on the 19th, if I can get a concurrence of my council, when we do adjourn this meeting at that time. Okay? So that way we can all put it in our books. Staff can book off that time for the city council chambers, and then we can do a 2-hour session then. And if we complete it, we complete it. Otherwise, we'll continue it on. And in the meantime, if any updates occur in all the issues we'll be talking about today, then we can get to that as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to staff to say, oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Ashcraft did ask me to.
I will be leaving, I guess, at about 10:30 because I have a previous engagement that was made much earlier, thank you, much earlier than this was put on the docket with the family. So I'll be leaving at 10:30, but I'll be watching the entire taped or videoed program later on.
From staff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the City Council, Adam Chaparian, City Manager's Office. There are several items on the agenda this morning, as requested by City Council during our last workshop. They include an update from the Torrance Refining Company, as well as Southern California Edison regarding power supply. Will be followed up by a TFD update regarding statewide regulations. We also have Dr. Fine here from the AQMD, who will be giving an update on several rulemaking in effect with the Rule 1118, 1180, and 1410. Michael Smith will cover the Torrance alert system notification, particularly when we notify on flaring events. And lastly, we'll give an update on the $2.7 million AQMD SCP funds. Before you are the order of presenters this morning, and we would like to extend a big thank you for all the presenters to be here on a Saturday morning, including Steve Steach, representing the TRC from the refinery manager, Neil Hunstein from Southern California Edison, Dr. Fine from South Coast AQMD, Chief Cerna, Chief Dumais, Michael Smith, and lastly, I'll wrap up on the update. So with that, I'd like to introduce Steve Steach, refinery manager, who will give us an update. Steve. Thank you.
Morning, Honorable Mayor, council members, staff, and fellow residents of the South Bay. I'm here to give an update on the second quarter refinery operations. We did complete our first major turnaround for the Torrance Refinery. This involved a number of different units. Our crude unit, one of our two cokers, the saturated gas plant, the hydrocracker, its hydrogen plant, and the FCC feed hydrotreater. We developed and executed new procedures to shut the units down and restart the units with virtually no flaring. That's a first for this refinery. At the peak of the turnaround, we had over 2,000 additional workers on top of our normal staff of, we advertise that as 600 employees-ish and 500 contractors, so you can add 2,000 on that. That was the workforce during that period in the second quarter. We completed a lot of items that will improve the reliability, the efficiency, the yield, and of the refinery going forward, and we're now back at plan rates, so I'm happy that that's behind us. We've already seen significant improvement from some of our units. During the turnaround, well, prior to and during, there was a team of 6 California OSHA auditors and a representative from the Torrance Fire Department. They did a turnaround audit. They came before the turnaround, visited 6 different times, 3 times at the beginning and 3 times, I guess, at the conclusion. But they came before to review the scope, to make sure we were inspecting, repairing the equipment as they would expect. They came during the turnarounds for those 3 units, and they interviewed the workers. They checked the permitting. They checked the training records of the workers, and then they came at the end to make sure that all the work was done as planned, that we didn't remove any scope at the end, and that everything was addressed. And I guess I'm happy to say that verbally we've been told there was no findings, so we are awaiting the final written confirmation, but it was, from all aspects, as I understand, a very good audit. We were concerned going into the turnaround with all the hydrogen consuming units down that we would have a period of time where we would have excess high purity hydrogen. And we asked the South Coast Air Quality Management District for approval for a temporary hydrogen vent to vent that directly to atmosphere. That's a standard design feature for just about every hydrogen plant I've ever seen, and it's used throughout all the other hydrogen plants in the South Bay. The hearing board denied our request to put a temporary hydrogen vent in, and there was a period of time where we did have to flare high purity hydrogen. It's unfortunate because we did try to do the right thing, and we did not get the support we needed, and there was unnecessary flaring, emissions, and noise. So apologize for that, but we will continue trying to push this hydrogen vent, and I will talk about it in a second. Moving on to flaring. The AQMD published preliminary numbers for the refinery for flaring in 2016. They were preliminary because it contained substituted worst-case data. Now, why do you substitute worst-case flaring data from prior years? Well, if our flare meters are out of range, either below range or above range, we substitute the highest number from previous years, or if the meter's simply not working. And then we're allowed to go back and use alternate methods to substitute data. So the numbers that were presented last year for us were not finalized. We did submit to the AQMD, and they have reposted our numbers for last year. The revised numbers, the approved numbers, they now place us at about half of our annual flaring target, and that also places us the 3rd lowest flarer.
Could we cease the conversation so we can hear this? Thank you.
This puts us as the 3rd lowest flarer emissions of all the refineries in the South Bay for 2016. In June, I mentioned our shutdown and startup procedures we modified, but in June we did submit an application for a permit for a permanent event to vent high pressure, high purity hydrogen to the atmosphere. I view this as a win-win-win project. This is a win for the refinery. It's a win for the city, the people who live in it. It's a win for the agency because When you put the high-purity hydrogen to the flare system, number one, we have these vapor recovery compressors. We have large vapor recovery compressors to recover the flare gas and reprocess through the fuel gas system. Hydrogen is the smallest element. You should know that for chemistry, like atomic number one, right? It is too light for flare gas compressors. It causes our flare gas compressors to overheat and shut down. So simply when you put that high-purity hydrogen to the flare gas compressors, it means we cannot run them, and everything else in the flare system must flare. It also causes our meters to be below the bottom of their range because it reads low because it's the lightest weight. So we have to substitute worst-case data, and we have to go back and correct it. So it makes flaring emissions look way higher. It also causes unnecessary noise and emissions because burning the hydrogen, it causes NOx emissions. Hydrogen isn't a pollutant. It's not a greenhouse gas. It's a natural element that dissipates when you vent it into the atmosphere. And in addition to that, with the flare gas compressors down, it commingles with the other flare gas, and it causes that flaring. So it's not a good thing. So the project's good for everyone, and I urge the AQMD to approve this permit so we can go ahead and install that hydrogen and vent hydrogen, high purity hydrogen when we have access like everyone else does. Yesterday, kind of on the subject of power failures and flaring and stipulated abatement order, we had a tabletop drill at the refinery as part of the stipulated abatement order for the power failure follow-up. We have multiple agencies there, the Torrance Fire and Police, LA County Hazmat, and the AQMD. And it went very well. We learned some things, and we'll implement them into our plans going forward. On the subject of NOx, I wanted to touch on that. We do have a NOx reduction plan that we're working on. We have 3 projects. We have 2 retrofits of heaters and boilers in process, expect to complete in 2018 or 19. I think that's what it says. That's using traditional ammonia injection into the stacks of heaters and boilers and selective catalyst reduction catalyst. On a good note, we're partnering with the AQMD and a company called ClearSign Combustion Technology to pioneer a new technology in one of our heaters that does not use ammonia injection, does not use SCR catalyst. So hopefully that will prove successful at achieving the ultra-low NOx levels without those. And if it does, then that'll change our plans going forward, because after we do the first 2 units, we have 2 additional ones we need to do that are targeted for 2022. So that's a good thing we're working on. Electrical reliability, we have made progress. The key milestones we've reached since the last update was we did receive a permit to construct from the City of Torrance. I thank you for that, for a foundation and a 220,000 volt switching station on our property. And I'll let Neil from the SoCal Edison talk about the scope of the project for those that don't remember it. But that's a milestone. We did send a contingent up to the Public Utility Commission and talk to the president of the California Public Utility Commission. We had Jeff Dill from PBF. I think, Mayor, you went, and I thank you for that. Yeah, that's right. I think you had a conflict. So, but thanks for the city attended. Edison, of course, attended. And the AQMD had a representative there, and from all the feedback I had, the meeting went very well. All the stakeholders that are engaged in this project, it's another win-win-win project, I think, for everybody. We are moving forward with design, and we hope to begin execution of the project later this year, early next year, with the wiring completed in 2019 to the refinery. I will say we've already achieved significant improvement from a year ago just through the cooperation, coordination, improved attention, maintenance, preventative maintenance with Edison, so I thank Edison for that. Before we get to any questions you have, I'll just talk about a few of the key activities we hosted on the community relations. We did host our community advisory panel. We have a goal to meet, I think it's 4 to 6 times a year, so I think that's our second meeting. We'll have another one an update after this. I think we have one coming up in August. Talked about most of these same subjects. We had an event for the Torrance Unified School District. What was the Pegasus program is now a $100,000 Torrance Refinery Innovative Education Grant Program. So I went to this, and I know some, I think Heidi, you were there, Councilman Ashcroft, you were there. It was really nice to see the teachers that have received the grants brought their students and their projects, and they demonstrated them. It was kind of a fun day, so that's a good thing. And there's a long list of some other activities, probably that we hosted during the second, or participated in or helped fund during the second quarter. Probably the main one, though, is the YMCA Kids Camp Golf Tournament. Toyota was a long-term sponsor of that tournament. We did take over that. It was very successful. I think it was their most successful tournament. We helped send a lot of kids to camp, so that was a really good thing we did. And those are just part of our commitment to be a good neighbor and to earn the right to operate in the cities that host us. Thank you. That's really all I had to present. Did you have any questions for me?
Council, any questions? Councilmember Goodrich.
In regards to your attempt to avoid flaring of the hydrogen, the pure hydrogen, you said the AQMD denied your request to vent it. And what was their justification for that?
They denied it on safety concerns. We did bring hydrogen plant design engineers from design companies and presented that was a standard design feature and we pointed out that there's, I know at least 2 hydrogen plants that I personally have been involved in the South Bay and other facilities that have that, but ultimately that was the basis of their safety concerns. We weren't able to convince them that it was safe to do, even though we brought in experts and we pointed out they'd permitted it elsewhere.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Councilmember Hurry.
The high purity hydrogen venting, you said that can eliminate some substitution for worst case data. Could you expound on that a little bit more?
Well, we have a large hydrogen plant. It makes 100 million cubic feet a day of hydrogen, and that's used to remove the sulfur and the nitrogen from the oil that comes in. If all units have a minimum rate they can operate at, and this one is around 35 million cubic feet a day. So if we get into a shutdown situation where the units that are running are consuming less than that 35 million cubic feet a day, it has to be either, right now it's only piped to go to the flare. Most units have an atmospheric vent. This is a 99.99% hydrogen. It's ultra pure hydrogen. Like I say, it's very light. It just naturally dissipates. They're usually vented at a high elevation, not as high as a flare, but at a high elevation with a muffler. And it would be located inside the refinery, not on the perimeter of the flare. So even the noise would be mitigated by the location of it. And there is a feature, because it is possible that lightning or something could ignite the hydrogen. So there's a steam quench to put it out. But it's vented at a safe location, so even if it ignites, it's not a safety issue. And it's so light, it just readily dissipates into the atmosphere.
Steve, is the refinery and AQMD still working on that possibility?
We submitted the application, and they're a permit engineer. I think things are going pretty well. I think the discussions we've had, they're receptive to it. I think they are still looking for some body, and maybe it's the Torrance Fire Department, to review the safety of it. And maybe back to your comment that maybe they didn't feel they had anybody qualified to review this and improve the safety, and that could be what was lacking. There wasn't a report or something like that from an agency of the government that has oversight for safety. That could be that's maybe what we need to get it ultimately approved.
Oh, efforts continue.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and other Southern California Edison customers here. My name is Neil Hunstein. I'm the Director of Project Management for Southern California Edison, and been assigned to this project since the, oh, thank you. There we go. I've been assigned to this project as the beginning and was here, actually here to give you a really brief update from where we left off the last time we updated the City Council. So since we were last here, we have completed the preliminary engineering associated with the 220,000 kilovolt power supply that would be going to the refinery. The switching station, which would actually be where the interconnection between Edison and PBF, Torque, and the underground portion of the design. We've completed the method of service. That was something else we were working on. That is has the whole complete aspects associated with design, what it means to the Edison system, contractual things, and other. We continue to have regular meetings. As Steve mentioned, the dialogue between Edison and Torque has been very, very good and sound. We continue to have that dialogue as needed as we move forward here. And right now, we're really working on coordinating how we're going to construct these as the refinery is doing their work on the electrical upgrades, and we're doing our work as well. As far as the switching station itself, it'll be we call it gas-insulated switchgear. It's just basically a gas that's used for insulation so you can make facilities smaller. There'd be say, it's roughly 6,000 square foot facility that would be the switching station for where that interface would take place. And there'd be a transmission line running, and I have a little picture that I'll show on the next page, but a transmission line is about 900 feet long from our existing Edison facility underground to where this switching station would take place. There are some existing Edison facilities there, 66 kV line that we'll have to relocate. Other scope item, even though it's a power station, you still need to have power to the power station, so we would need to we would need to route in a 16 kV typical distribution line to that location. We'll have redundant telecommunications. Other substations in the general area, they all talk to each other from a protection standpoint, and protection, what I mean is having breakers open and do what they're supposed to do. So there would be several other stations that we need to go and upgrade as well. Working with the refinery, we get easements and right-of-ways for the construction. And this is just a rough picture of give you an idea of what we would be constructing. Up at the top, you can see 190th, Prairie would be to the right. The thing to focus on is a lot of things going on here, as I mentioned with telecom and whatnot, but the red line represents the transmission, and that would go off our existing right-of-way where the lines are. It would go underground, and then the actual switching station would be in the parking lot over by on PBF property, which they use, I think, for the refinery turnarounds. That's really the basic scope of what we were looking at for the facility. Anyway, that was all I was really going to cover. I appreciate you letting us come here and speak to you. Do you have any questions for me or for Southern California Edison?
Yes. Could you show that existing 66K line on that map that you're going to relocate?
The existing line runs right through here where these two buildings are. So we'll just get that out of the way.
And when you say get that out of the way,
Well,
where are you going to relocate it to?
We'll actually go and underground it, so it's going to still be in the same general area here. Just getting it, when I say moving it, we're moving it away from where the existing is now. It's not going to be that much different from what you see.
Councilwoman Nashua.
With the new operation for Edison on the grounds of PBF, what guarantees that the transmission of electricity is going to be better since the feed in is still going to be coming in? They don't have any, PBF doesn't have the power over the operation of it. Edison does.
Okay, let me see if I'll try to answer your question as best I can here. The way it'll work is right now we have an existing 220,000 kilovolt transmission line that runs right in this general area here over. So As far as I'll use the word feed, but it's actually the electric supply to the switching station, which will be located right here. You actually have two ways of actual power getting there. It actually, what we'll do is we call it a loop-in. The line goes in and the line comes out. Yet, should we have, for some reason, lose, say, this line, you still have power this way. So you'll have a redundant power supply of the 220,000 volts getting there. So you actually have two different methods for that to take place. Does that answer your question?
It helps, thanks. What is happening now, before this has all been changed out? What happened before? Why was there complete turn off of electricity? How was it fed in?
The existing system as it's built right now, there's a La Fresia substation, which is, I don't remember the streets, I apologize. Yukon, off of Yukon, near the school over there. So we have an existing substation right now, and in that substation, the electricity is transformed from 220,000 volts down to 66,000 volts. And then there's four lines, if you will, electric lines that feed two substations which are located on the refinery. Inadvertent wiring error by an Edison employee caused the power for all four of those lines to be turned off. In simplistic terms, that was the cause of what happened.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take questions after all this is done, so we have a period of time for that. So remember your questions. If we don't get to them today, we'll be able to get to them at the next workshop.
Okay, good morning, Mayor, Honorable Body, Council. We have made some great strides since our last workshop. The new refinery regulations have been finalized with a scheduled implementation date of October 1st. I know originally we looked to July 1st, but October 1st is the new target date. We look forward to our continued partnership with the Torrance Refining Company to ensure they meet the regulations and the requirements, but more importantly than that, prior to the adoption of the new regulations, the refinery has taken some forward strides, and we've actually started implementing some of those requirements already. Chief DeMay continues to remain engaged at all levels and will provide an update and an overview both at the local and state levels.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, Mayor, Council, and staff and community. My name is David Dumais. I'm the Deputy Fire Chief, and I'll give you a brief overview of what the department has been going on for the last 18 months. I'll go that way. Throughout these last few months, a year and a half, staff at the refinery and myself have been working on language to move the consent decree into a more livable document. With the assistance of the City Attorney's Office, we'll be working with outside counsel to bring that MOU, MOA into fruition. So we're moving forward with that. The department worked with the LA County Health Hazmat Division of the LA County Fire Department in a cooperative inspection of the refinery, and we chose one unit because we wanted to go and see and get a feel for how the refinery was working safety-wise, and it would be too difficult to do the entire refinery. So I want to thank Chief Bill Jones with the LA County Health Hazmat Division, LA County Inspectors Fariba Khalidan and Michael Whitehead, and our staff in helping us with that, and we'll soon come out with some findings and share with the refinery and your staff. Through that inspection, we've been working cooperatively with the refinery to coordinate a safety culture assessment. That safety culture assessment is going to be part of the new regulations that I'll cover in just a second, but the refinery has agreed to move forward with that at a more expedient pace and just kind of get an idea of what the safety culture is at the plant and then move forward with any action items. And we're working with the refinery to grab a vendor, and obviously it'll be on their dime, and that vendor will come up with recommendations, and we're going to be moving forward with that soon. As Chief Cerna alluded to, the California refinery regulations are in place, with the exception of the emergency response, preparedness and response regs. The Department of Industrial Relations PSM regs are in place, and as of October 1st, the CalARP, California Accidental Release Program 4 regulations will be enforceable. So we'll be moving forward with enforcing those regulations. We have been working very intimately with the refinery for notification of flaring. The communication with the refinery goes into our staff, our emergency response staff, and the public safety dispatch. And we have been sending out notifications for unplanned flaring events to notify the community in the event that there was need for immediate action based on immediate life and health concerns. We'll be working with your body to work on those notifications moving forward, and Michael Smith's group. I've been intimately involved, as well as others throughout the state, in the Governor's Interagency Refinery Task Force, ensuring agency cooperation to enhance safety at the refineries. I personally have been co-chairing the training group with another member of the group to put classes together and develop a curriculum for refinery inspectors, and that's moving forward. Along those lines, the new Program 4, CalARP Program 4 regs are extremely more in depth and focus just on the refinery. So your body's agreement, we've moved forward with allotting some funds to create, to go out for an RFP, request for proposal, for a consultant to do those inspections at the refinery. Working to put that RFP together so that January 1st we'll have that consultant on board and they can start working on those, enforcing those rules. We may have to go and look at an assessment for the Coupa fees, because those monies can be directly related to the refinery, and we can get those fees back. So we may do an assessment of the Coupa fees for that. Mr. Chaparro and myself have been working extensively with the Air District on a number of rulemaking rules. 1410, Modified Hydrofluoric Acid Storage and Use. 1180, the Community Monitoring, Air Monitoring Program. And then the last 1118, refinery flaring, that has been completed and approved by the board and will be enforceable moving out to reduce flaring and from the refineries. I think it's 19, or it starts becoming enforced, I think in 19, pretty soon, yeah. And Dr. Fine can talk to that as well. One of the goals that we had from the beginning over a year ago was to reestablish the South Bay Community Awareness and Emergency Response Group, which is a nonprofit public benefit corporation, otherwise known as South Bay Care. And what happens is you get companies, refineries, businesses that use and store chemicals. And those companies put monies toward education and emergency response that can be shared through the community. So we're working with other entities, Torrance Refinery, Chevron Refinery, and other chemical companies to bring that corporation, that group back up and increase safety and awareness throughout the community. And then I'm excited about one more thing that I apologize for not being on the slide, is AQMD requires that the refinery, with the use of hydrofluoric acid, anytime there's a small leak, 6 parts per million is the minimum, they receive a notification. It goes to their office and they're aware of it. We, as the fire department, our staff, Chief Cerna, we now get that same notification. So if there's a reading of 6 parts per million that alarms to a HF sensor, we now get that on our phone, we now get that on our text message and our emails, and we call over the refinery and see what's going on. So I think that's another increase in safety and increased awareness on the fire department's part. So with that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Council have any questions for the chief? Councilmember Herring.
On that training group for the refinery inspectors, will that information be made available to the council as well? An overview of the training?
Absolutely.
Okay. And on the South Bay Community Awareness and Emergency Response, how will citizens of the South Bay be selected to participate with this group?
We've had one meeting, and that was basically to agree to put that group back in play. There was two groups, actually, Beach Cities and South Bay. The move is maybe to make one large group, which it would encompass the South Bay and as well as the Wilmington refineries as well. So you're right. We will let the public know once that group gets up and running. We've established a chair. Jill Burkhart with Chevron Refinery is going to be the chair of that group. And as the meetings grow and we establish an organization, we'll share that with you and with other community members as well.
Councilmember Griffith.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for your information this morning. I had a little question, if you could clarify for me about the CalART program consultant that you talked about, the cost of that and the Coupa fee assessment. Could you clarify who's responsible for what here?
Well, the city of Torrance is responsible for conducting inspections at the refinery. Let's start there. The Program 4 regulations are large and more encompassing of what the Program 3 inspections were prior to this. I think it's at double the responsibility of one person to be able to conduct the inspection of that refinery. It's so complex and so complex and takes a very large amount of training and expertise to get up to that level, that it ties into that training group that we've established to get the classes so that our inspectors can enforce some of these regulations. So it's a responsibility for us. We don't have somebody that can walk in today and can do that inspection. So we've asked the council for funds to move forward with that. It's been approved, so now we have to go out and find a person or a corporation that can do that inspection, that responsibility for us. So it is our responsibility as a participating agency of the Coupa to do the inspection on the refinery.
But you talked about a fee assessment that sounded like that would be a potential additional source or secondary source
Because the
for
assessment
funding?
is, because the monies for Coupa fees are tied to corporations and companies that use chemicals, this particular regulation only is for the refinery. No other business in the city will have this regulation upon them. So the thought is that we go out and we find out exactly what it's going to cost, and then we can assess those fees to, in this case, to the refinery and recover those fees.
That's kind of what I was looking at.
Right.
Is this the refinery, is this the state that would
Right.
fund this, or who's funding that
It would be
ultimately?
the refinery.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up is Dr. Fine from the SC AQMD. Morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Again, my name is Philip Fine, Deputy Executive Officer at the South Coast AQMD in the Planning and Rules Division. Happy to be back. Last time I was here a few months ago, I presented where we were with some of the rules that we've been working on, and I'll be providing that update today. We've made some considerable progress on many of the rules, and I hope to be able to show you where we are with that. And then at the end, a couple other things have come up today that hopefully I could try to address. I don't have all the answers today, but I will try my best. So in terms of the rules we're working on, as I said before, there's really 4 primary rules that are going to affect refinery operations that we're working on as we speak. The first one we actually already adopted in July. This was Rule 1118 on refinery flaring. So what we did in this rule was incorporate key provisions of a rule that had already been passed by US EPA. They call it the US EPA Refinery Sector Rule. It was much broader than just flaring, but there were 30 to 40 pages just on flaring. So as we do with many federal rules or even state rules, we will incorporate them into our rules to make them harmonize, such that there's not conflicting or contradictory requirements on our facilities. So there was quite a bit of amendments that went into our existing rule to do that. And a couple extra things we put in there. We want the facilities to prepare a scoping document to further evaluate the feasibility of avoiding or even eliminating flaring in some circumstances. Rule 1118 was very successful, passed over 10 years ago, in reducing flaring through all our refineries throughout the basin. So what we want to do now is do a further analysis over the next couple years to take that next step and reduce flaring even further. You heard earlier that that Torrance Refining Company had actually done some good work in this turnaround to reduce their flaring, and those are the kind of practices that we want to spread to all our refineries in the area. Another important thing is we removed the $4 million cap on mitigation fees. As you may know, for flaring, we charge mitigation fees for sulfur emissions from flaring, and there's a cap that's set based on the throughput of the facility, and they will pay fees with mitigation fees as the flaring increases, but then once it reaches a certain level, no more than $4 million will be paid, and that cap has only been exceeded twice over the whole history of the program, but one of the times was with the refinery in Torrance. So now that cap is gone, and you could think of it as if it's a mitigation fee, just because you hit that cap doesn't mean that there isn't more mitigation that could be done. So that cap is now removed, and it would be unlimited if the flaring continues above that cap. We've updated notification and reporting requirements. One of the things we're starting right now is convening a working group to make the flare notifications a little more useful for the community and the first responders. There's been a lot of comments that they're a little bit cryptic and they don't provide all the information that community members really want, and when they get the reporting, and the size of the flaring. So we want to kind of update that system. I'm happy to hear that the Torrance City Fire is getting their messages on their cell phones and email. Our inspectors still get it by pager. So we need to update those systems, and we'll be working with all the refineries to do that. We did some other updates of VOC emission factors that came down from the national level, removed some outdated provisions and timing that no longer applied. But the real important thing is that scoping document that's going forward, and we'll be using those scoping documents for a phase 2 rulemaking in a couple years to see how we could really look at those caps and see if there's any areas where we can eliminate or really reduce flaring. The other thing we're doing, and this came up in the hearing, and in some of the working groups, that there's a lot of uncertainties about the amount of flaring emissions from different types of flares, and it's very hard to directly measure flaring emissions. There's lots of estimates. So there's some technology out there now that we think can actually better quantify that. So we're gathering information, and hopefully we'll have some contracts to go out and really directly measure flaring emissions better than they have before, and that'll also feed into phase 2 of the rule. This was a rule that had pretty broad consensus by the time it went to our board. We always strive for that. From the refineries, from many of the community members supported it as well. There were a couple minor issues that came up at the hearing that can be worked out as we go forward. Another rule we're right in the middle of is Rule 1180. This rule will require facilities to conduct both fence line and community-based monitoring. Our refinery facilities. The Bay Area already has a similar rule that they're currently implementing. There is now, as a companion to the extension of cap and trade that just was signed by the governor, AB 617 is also going to require community and potentially fence line monitoring. There's a lot of activities in this area in terms of requirements and technology and some of the work that we've been doing. So this is just a part of that picture. But right now, we're proposing that there'll be fence line and community air monitoring requirements. We want the monitoring to be continuous, such that the data can be provided publicly as it's being collected. We want those available to the public and available to first responders, available to anyone who wants to see it, available to the refinery themselves so they can track whether there's any type of unknown, unplanned releases. And then there obviously have to be procedures for QA, QC, and all those things to make sure the data is valid. So we're preparing draft guidelines for implementation. We have a public workshop coming up in September. We've had several working group meetings, and one of the things that have been requested, not only by the refineries, but also by some community members, and is how it actually works in Bay Area, is while the refineries may be responsible for the fence line portion, is there a way that actually the AQMD would be responsible for the community portion, and there would have to be some kind of fee structure to pay for that by the refineries. And then the next question, specific to Torrance, is how does the $2.7 million contracts that are being worked on right now going to play into this? And it is quite possible that the system that is going in Torrance as part of that work could satisfy some or all of the requirements that may be required in this rule. Just as we're on this topic, we are in the our board did agree to go into contract with both the City of Torrance and Sonoma Technologies in terms of moving forward with monitoring and alerting system, and we're in the contracting stage now of trying to put the contracts together and work with both the city and the other contractor to get that in place. Okay, so the other rule we're working on is Rule 1410, the HF use and storage at the facilities. We've had a very active working group. We've had meetings in both Torrance and in Wilmington, and we've also had several working group meetings at our district headquarters. We had one last week. It's been well attended. We've really dove into some of the alternative technologies that are out there for HF. We've had the providers of those technologies present. We've had Cal OSHA present. We've had the facilities themselves present on their safety mechanisms. And we're really moving into the rule concept phase right now. We've really evaluated all the available information on HF and HF hazard mitigation, and we've started to discuss those initial rule concepts. Unfortunately, we ran out of time at the last working group meeting to get deep into that, so we're scheduling another one towards the end of the month to pick up where we left off there. And we're really beginning a very detailed CEQA analysis, environmental impact analysis of the potential changes that may occur at the facilities, as well as a socioeconomic assessment to see what the impacts would be to jobs, the regional economy, and gas prices as well, based on the different actions that the facilities may take to comply with wherever the rule goes. So I'm happy to answer questions on this as well. But finally, the other rule that we're working on that is going to affect all the refineries and a lot of other facilities in our area is our reclaim program. This is our NOx and SOx cap and trade program. Our board has taken the position in our air quality management plan that the program needs to be sunset in the coming years, and that all facilities will have to go back to essentially putting on those best available controls. Now there's state law that also anticipates the same thing. So we're hard at work on this process. This will lead to more changes at the refineries, primarily reduce NOx emissions. So we're working on some concepts with the rule, a lot of administrative concepts. We don't want any new facilities coming into the program when it's going to be sunset at some point. And we're looking at certain types of facilities that can exit reclaim early. There's lots of other rule amendments we'll have to do. So there's a lot of activity in this area, and we're looking at rule amendments in the first half of next year on this one. So with that, that's all I had to present in terms of rules. I mentioned the contract. I know that's on the agenda later. I'm happy to answer questions on that as they come up as part of that item. In terms of the HF venting, I am personally not that familiar with that. That's being handled by either our permit engineer with our permit engineers with the current application. I think what was discussed was a request for a variance from their current permit conditions with our hearing board. Our hearing board is an independent body. It's not part of the regular AQMD staff, so I'm not even familiar with that case. I'm happy to talk about maybe process and procedure, but I'm not familiar with the intimate aspects of either that hearing board case or the permit application. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Fine.
Yeah.
Do we have questions for Dr. Fine from the council? Councilmember Wiedemann?
Yes, the timeline for 1410, the last time we met, it was November, December for finalization. Is that still on target?
It is still on our calendar for December. We have a challenge with our CEQA document, which is always usually the case when it comes to the timing of our rulemaking. So it would be a pretty big challenge to get that CEQA document with all the required statutory deadlines and review periods. It's still possible we'll go December, but we're open to having to delay it a month or two because of those statutory requirements under CEQA.
Anyone else? I'm sorry? We're gonna take questions later. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fine.
You're welcome.
Next up, we're gonna have the mass notification system with Michael Smith from Cable and Community Relations.
Good morning, Mayor and Council, and to the community. My name is Michael Smith. I'm from the City Manager's Office. Got a couple of things we're going to cover today, and that is the review of the Torrance Alerts Policy and Guidelines Statement and then the status of the Interactive Communications Office. On July 18th, the City Council adopted a resolution approving a standard policy and guidelines statement concerning the Torrance Alert system. Now, the purpose is to provide governance and guidelines on the use and management of the Torrance Alerts early warning system. Now, Torrance Alerts is part of a larger group of warning systems that the city has, including barriers, radio, hotline on the telephone, social media, broadcast radio, as well as the television. The way Torrance Alerts is deployed, for those of you who have not yet signed up, and we encourage everyone to sign up, is through the landline telephones that are imported on a quarterly basis. That includes unlisted telephone numbers. There is a self-registration, which includes the ability to opt in, where you get to define how you want to receive messaging. And then the third leg is the integrated public alerts warning system. And that's where if you happen to be in the area and we send out a message, it'll hit the cellular towers and notify you. So you don't have to be registered. But that would be used when there is something catastrophic. Now, when do we use Torrance Alerts? Well, we're using it when there's an emergency. And what exactly is an emergency? It's a call to action. Examples include avoid this intersection, shelter in place, and evacuate this area. Considerations for emergency messaging is the imminent or perceived threat of life or property, disaster notifications, evacuation notices, public health and safety emergencies. Non-emergency messaging is advisory messages, and we're looking at those as lost children, crime, water main breaks, weather, air quality, and other special events that might come up in the community, such as the Armed Forces Day Parade, or important public meetings. Now, non-emergency messaging consideration, the reason why we're using Torrance Alerts as an emergency system is because the more you send out of non-emergency messaging, the public becomes desensitized to those messages. The notifications become identified as non-emergencies, and it creates an unrealistic expectation and confusion. And that's why the City Council has adopted a policy to clarify the use. So non-emergency messages will be sent to a web page designated social media such as Facebook and Twitter. So if you go on the newly designed Torrance website under Torrance Alerts, there are current alerts that include an ongoing stream of all alerts that are published. And then, of course, you can get those by signing in. Now, the second leg is the Interactive Communications Office. The City Council decided to transfer responsibility and management of Torrance Alerts from the Police Department to the City Manager's Office. The Torrance Refining Company committed to $145,000 a year for up to 5 years of support. So far, we've created the office, purchased equipment, and as well as installed it. We've created job descriptions, an exam, both written and performance. Over 200 applications were received. Performance exam and oral interviews were conducted, and we selected new interactive communication officers. Over the last 5 weeks, we've been training them in coordination with the police and fire department. They will be shadowing the police department personnel starting tomorrow on a daily basis. And then the transition, although the correction in your printed material read for August 13th, which is Sunday, I've clarified that to August 14th because I actually want to be here when the switch occurs. And that's all we have for now. Any questions?
Are there any questions from the council? Councilmember Goodrich.
Going back to the slide that says non-emergency messaging, you said the plan is to keep these non-emergency messages to email with certain subscriptions. And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that this non-emergency messaging would include notification of flaring. Is that correct?
Air quality is included.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there an option, because, and I ask because a number of members of the community have asked this, to still opt in via text message?
We are not planning on sending out text messaging for non-emergency messaging, which include flaring. Now, if the flaring rose to the level of a call to action, and we were notified by safety personnel, the incident commander, that there was a call to action included, then yes, they would be sent out in text messaging.
Okay. If I could speak with Deputy Chief Dumais, because we had a conversation about this, a pretty lengthy one, a month or two back, and I wanted to get into a little bit more details about this. So you recall our conversation?
Correct.
So could you go into a little bit of detail for the audience's benefit about the different types of flaring alerts that the city receives and how those relate to what we would consider a call to action?
The flaring, anytime the refinery flares, they notify us. That could be as a result of a planned flaring event, that they are going to do some maintenance on a particular unit. And as Mr. Steach stated, they contact the AQMD and they say, we're going to do this plan. And then during that period of time, they may or may not they may or may not flare. But there are times when that are outside of a planned event, that are unplanned. And the AQMD, Dr. Fine could speak to this as well, has a determination of how much emissions are emitted that qualifies as an unplanned event. If it's less than those levels of emissions established by the AQMD, it's still unplanned, but it doesn't meet the unplanned definition, if I'm explaining that correct. So we've taken up a term that have said, as the department, that's a visual, because it is a visual. There is smoke, there is flame, but it doesn't meet that criteria of an unplanned event. We still believe, based on information from the AQMD, that unless we get some readings at our level by our hazmat team, there's really no call to action. If the AQMD happens to call us and say, hey, there's an air emergency, then I believe we'll put that information out to the community as a call to action. In the past, we were notifying the community anytime there was an unplanned event. And as Mr. Smith indicated, we'd like to move away from that and move toward if there's a call to action, to modify that alert to a unplanned event with a call to action.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like you're saying that we have the mechanisms in place to be able to discern non-emergency to emergency.
Correct.
Okay, so it sounds like the only thing remaining is to address the community concerns, going back to my original point, which is how do we alert people that want to, say, just exercise an extra abundance of caution and be extra safe in the event that it doesn't rise?
Part of our hazmat team's cadre of equipment are handheld air monitors. They're not monitors that can monitor to the event or to a level that the AQMD can monitor. So if we were to go out there and sit at Crenshaw and Crenshaw and Delamo with our monitors, and we don't find anything that's a threat to immediate life and health, there's no need to call anybody to action.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
If it's not an immediate threat to life and health, could it still be considered unhealthy? Could there still be some level of pollutant that exceeds normal background levels?
I think that'd be a question for the AQMD.
Please.
So as Chief Dumais said, within our Rule 1118, there are different thresholds for reporting and notification. Pretty much all of the flaring goes into kind of a quarterly report we get from the facilities. At another threshold, we may get a notification, but it may not be part of the public notification. And then at another threshold, it is part of the required public notification. And those thresholds have been set at the points where we feel it is protecting public safety, and we're telling the public when there is an event that even has the potential. And if you sign up on our site to get notifications of flaring, you will get those notifications of flaring that are above those thresholds. In our recent amendments to 1118, we changed some of the emission factors, and the net effect of that is going to be many more of the flares that may not have been reported to us in real time or reported to the public will now be reported. There will be more flare events reported now because of some changes to the way that the emission factors work and, in effect, lowering those thresholds. So there will be more notifications now. And as I said, one of the things we're doing up to follow up on those rule amendments is really work with the facilities and the community to see what kind of how much more information can go into those notifications, so it really provides more details so that the public always has questions when they get a flare notification. So we want to be able to provide more information as much as possible in those notifications to have that public information out there. So, you know, if there was a large flaring event, everyone would get the notification. Our inspectors, you know, run to the scene. We start taking air samples. We're in communication with the local first responders. And if we think there is an imminent threat, then we work with the local responders who can take that action. We can't issue evacuation orders. We can't tell people to shelter in place, but fire departments and local responders can.
Okay, so it sounds like if the way the system is set up now, if they want to, if a community member wants to know the difference, or if there's going to be an immediate threat to life or health, Torrance alerts would suffice. But if they want some more finite information, a little bit more parsed information, then the AQMD alerts would be the way to go.
Yes, and we can help with that, and we're hoping that the alerts that as we update our system for notification, that fine scale information will be part of those alerts and not require an extra phone call to us or anyone else.
Okay. What methods of alert do you have available to you at the current time?
Like I said, some of our systems that we work with the refineries and our inspectors are a little out of date. I mentioned the pagers. I believe you get emails now. I'm not sure it goes to text. I'm sure people in the audience know better than I do on exactly what options there are. But one of the things we want to do is update that and make sure that there's many more available systems and texting and other types of ways you can get the information.
Okay. Thank you for the information, everybody. The one concern I have remaining is that there are still a large number of people in the city that don't get email on their phones, that may get text messages but don't get emails. And right now we don't have a system in place from either the city or the AQMD that can really address a need here. So I'm going to cease my questioning, and we've got a portion where the audience can comment on that, and that's where this original concern was derived. So I'll let them take over if there's some additional concerns.
Mayor, I had an additional question on this topic.
Councilmember Griffiths.
Thank you.
To whom?
The information about the alerting that I'm aware of that AQMD can provide for flaring information to the public, it would be really helpful if that information was published so that we would all know how to do that and we could see it in our information here. So maybe at our next workshop or somehow prior to that, we can get that information from AQMD and disseminate that. But it's my understanding that anyone in the public can sign up to receive flaring alert notices so that anyone who is concerned about flaring that doesn't require a call to action can get all the flaring alerts that they want. That's correct? And that's something you can do for us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could provide that information at the next workshop as well as send it to the city staff before next workshop.
Great, really appreciate it. Thank you.
And Councilman, just for clarification, we do have the links for signing up for the AQMD alerts on our city's website.
Great, thanks.
And I guess we can use all the methods that we have for communicating with the public, other than doing a Torrance alert that you can sign up for AQMD alerts. And perhaps we should even consider that people who are, to send it out, because people who are signed up for Torrance alert, to let them know that this is how you sign up for the AQMD information.
As well as follow our Torrance alerts on Twitter as well as Facebook.
Yeah, as much, as much as we put out. But again, as Councilmember Goodrich said, there are people who don't have Twitter, who don't have Facebook, who don't have email, and they don't have cell phones, or they don't have pagers. So now we're talking people who just have landlines, and we have to have a methodology to get that information to them as well. So maybe that'll be through our newsletter system, as well as even our magazine that we put out. Something we consider. The more information we give out, the better chances we have of people seeing it. I think that's what we all want. Anybody else have any more questions?
Yes.
Councilmember Herring.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Smith, Mr. Smith, I want to commend you and your staff on moving forward with the interactive communication office personnel. Some of us council member were a little leery about adding more staff and more personnel, but there have been some critical communication gaps in our alert system. And so I'm happy to see that we're moving forward, and you're part of a resolution for that. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the type of training that these individuals have had, and some things that we can be expecting for them to do in the very near future?
Certainly. The interactive communications team are very enthusiastic. They've been trained over the last 5 weeks. We've coordinated with police and fire, which included doing online certification of the Everbridge system. Everbridge is the system that manages the Torrance alerts. We've also had in-person training with Everbridge personnel over a 2-day period. The team has on individual basis done ride-alongs with the police department and the fire department. They've done what we call sit-alongs, where they've gone in the communications office and sat with the communication staff as Torrance alerts come in. And then beyond the Torrance alerts area of their responsibility, they're also responsible for other social media, website, radio, operations. So we've trained them on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, as well as the new website. They have been trained on that. They are prepared to assist the city in any form of communication with the public. They will be working 12-hour shifts on a rotating 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 3 days off, and then it continues to cycle. And then starting on tomorrow, they'll be working their 12-hour shifts. They will be situated in the police department. They'll be observing the entire shift, which would include listening to all the calls that come in, and then doing mock Torrance alert messaging within our test bid. And then the last thing was, we did do on Wednesday mock telephone calls from police and fire throughout the day to each of the Torrance alert staff team members. They received those calls, they punched them into the Everbridge system in our test bid, and we're able to evaluate and discuss how we could improve each of the alerts, and they did a fantastic job. So they're very enthusiastic and ready to get started.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? I see none. We'll go on to the next, is Torrance alerts. Is that you, Mr. Shaparian?
Thank you, Councilman. I also want to add there was additional information received from the Chemical Safety Board that we have included as part of the material. And just to recap, this is some of the follow-up to the findings from the initial explosion of February 2015. And there will be August 29, 2017 workshop in the LA area. We'll have additional information as available, and we'll share that with the council and the public. As we wrap up this portion of the workshop, I want to touch base on the community alert monitoring alert system. AQMD, as you all know, had the RFP for the $2.7 million, which the city applied. We're a partner with Argos Scientific. Through the RFP evaluation process, AQMD made a recommendation to their board that the proposal be bifurcated, with the community monitoring and the fence line monitoring awarded to Sonoma Technology, and the city come in on the alerting portion with our Torrance alerts mechanism, as well as a silent alarm system, a community alarm system. Having said that, the city is working to obtain the services of Argos Technology, which was our initial consultant, to be able to ascertain some of the differences between the proposals so that we can bring a educated direction to council as to the city's relationship. Having said that, we'll be meeting with both Sonoma, AQMD, as well as taking our consultant with us on August 15th to gain a better understanding of the proposal in front of us so that we can bring an item to City Council for the direction. Our goal is to work with AQMD to make the project happen. Moving forward, this is familiarity from prior discussions. We will continue to, I should slide forward the slides, I've been telling others. We will continue to meet monthly basis with both the Refinery and Southern California Edison. We find that dynamic very helpful in being able to get the updates, and the city's a partner in this endeavor, making sure that if there are any regulatory or permitting issues that we can expedite and make sure that the communication lines are open, and we want to commend both of the agencies and the companies for doing that. And then lastly, in regards to communications, Michael Smith already covered Torrance Alerts. We encourage the public to sign up with our new revamped website. It's very easy to sign up. And just last Tuesday during National Night Out, our community officers, police officers were passing out the postcards. We printed a couple thousand of those additional. We ran out from the initial batch, so we're excited to continue the effort. We do have a dedicated website, the torranceca.gov Refinery, where it's a depository of all the prior items and links, so that's a very good resource for the community to check out. And then we'll continue to work with the Torrance Refining Company on outreach and shelter-in-place campaign. And then part of the Rule 1410 is the alternative technologies that we're still exploring. At some point, there may be a follow-up to the Norton report, but I think that's included into the 1410 deliberation, and we'll keep you posted. Lastly, as far as the regulations, Chief Dume mentioned CalARP regs, October 1. If that changes, we'll update you in September, at the September, I believe, 19th upcoming workshop. California Department of Industrial Relations, their process safety management regulations will go into effect. And then Chief Dume and I are actively participating with our both Wilmington, Torrance, and we now have memorized how to get to Diamond Bar without using our Google or Waze. And very, very informative. Credit to the AQMD staff for all their efforts and all the industry and community members that participate in this. With that, I believe that concludes the staff and agency and refinery presentation, AQMD. We'll turn it over to council, and you may open it up for comment and discussion. Thank you.
Before we take the public comment, do we have any questions or statements from the city council? And where are we going to line up microphone for public comment? Right there? Okay. So anybody who would like to speak, I'd invite you to come over to the left.
I believe the city clerk has
oh, there's already a sign-up sheet? So why don't you go over to the left so we don't have to walk around, and then she'll name your name. That way we'll come up there as soon as possible. As I mentioned previously, Councilwoman Ashcraft must leave at 10:30, but she'll be watching everything as it's being recorded before we come back on the 19th when we reconvene this workshop. So we got a half hour to take some public comment. I'm not going to cut you off, and whoever comes up there, just be mindful that there's other people behind you, and we're going to try and get through as many as we can, if not all.
Are we going to give a time, Your Honor?
I'm sorry?
Are we giving a time?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Are you ready?
Let them be mindful of there's people behind them. Yeah.
Constance Sullivan?
Hi, I'm Connie Sullivan. I'm a business owner in the city of Torrance, and I appreciate you having this workshop today and the previous ones that you've held. I do want to talk about, I want to compare two refineries in the South Bay. One of them is the Chevron refinery, the other is the Torrance refinery. In Torrance, Mobil Oil in the 60s decided to put in an alkylation unit, and they chose to use hydrofluoric acid. in spite of the fact that there was already housing stock surrounding the community, surrounding the refinery. Chevron decided to put in a sulfuric acid alkylation unit, in spite of the fact that sulfuric acid is not as efficient as hydrofluoric acid. They decided to put people, their own workers, and the surrounding community over profits. The Torrance Refinery made the opposite choice. They decided to put profits over people. And now we're living with that disastrous decision today. And it needs to be rectified, in my opinion. The Chevron company is also switching from hydrofluoric acid in their Salt Lake City refinery. They're switching to another method, a safer method. And I understand that their workers are applauding that change. I also want to talk about human error, because human error is something that can't be engineered out of any process. If you saw the Chemical Safety Board's report, it's online, it's really a wonderful report. We see that in February 18th of 2015, there was a series of unfortunate decisions, human error decisions, that led to the disastrous explosion that also caused a near miss on the HF tank. We heard just today from Edison that there had been an inadvertent wiring error. Human error happens. It happens every day in our lives, and it can happen tomorrow at the Torrance Refinery. This needs to be switched out to something safer. Thank you.
I'll call the next three, so they'll be ready. Sally Hayati, Steve Goldsmith, Antoine Churg.
Good morning. My name is Sally Hayati. I'm president of the Torrance Refinery Action Alliance and a member of our science advisory panel. 8 members strong, 7 of us have PhDs. We're an all-volunteer group of local engineers and scientists with no vested interest for or against MHF. So Dr. Fine didn't mention this, but the South Coast AQMD staff did announce at the last meeting, although didn't get a chance to present, an initial decision by the staff that it is necessary to phase out modified hydrofluoric acid alkylation because of its potential to cause health risks to a significant number of people. The AQMD said it finds no proof that MHF behaves any differently than HF, despite a tall stack of documents provided by TORC, the refinery. How could it behave any differently from HF when for every 996 hydrofluoric acid molecules, there are only 14 MHF additive molecules, supposedly to give a safety advantage? That's too little additive to make a difference. The AQMD staff also found that the refinery's emergency mitigation systems do not guarantee adequate protection during a major accident. Now, this decision is promising for the community, but the industry is spending money hand over fist on consultants and lobbyists. Scientific merit is not the only way for them to win this battle. The U.S. Chemical Safety Board stated that the near miss, as we know, during the 2015 explosion could have been a catastrophic release of MHF. The CSB, Chemical Safety Board, is so worried that it convinced the DOJ to sue ExxonMobil in support of its subpoena for more information. Now, CSB has no power to regulate MHF, but it believes the community has a right to know that we deserve correct information on the MHF hazards. We agree, and we hope city representatives share that concern. The U.S. EPA confirmed in a recent report that the Torrance Refinery's offset consequence report for MHF significantly understates the consequence of a release. The modeling was incorrect, they stated, and the 3.2-mile toxic distance they estimated as the risk zone has no clear basis in fact. MHF is far more dangerous than has been claimed for 2 decades. Our region has been told that HF dangers were all but eliminated by MHF. Now, we hear the different story from the TRA Science Advisory Panel, the AQMD, the Chemical Safety Board, and the US EPA, who all agree that MHF is significantly more dangerous. The public is currently misinformed and unprepared for release. It's time for the City of Torrance to recognize this fact and meet its responsibility to safeguard public health. We would like very much for the city to reconsider again a measure in favor of a ban on MHF and to advocate for an MHF ban by the AQMD and state legislature. Also, we need to educate the citizens on actual HF dangers as agreed to by independent scientists and regulators. Prepare emergency plans and practice drills for an MHF release affecting the community. And there are several other things the city can do, and we hope very much to see our elected officials take responsibility on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Steve Goldsmith. Good morning, sorry. There were 2 major
Name,
things.
please.
Steve Goldsmith.
Thank you.
Sorry. 2 major things that happened Wednesday at the 1410 rule-making workshop. One was, as Sally mentioned, that the staff has now established that HF and MHF need to be phased out of the refineries in California. So while in the past, and the second one was that Chevron presented that their method for replacing hydrofluoric acid with another chemical, I'm not a scientist, is now commercial ready to go. They are in the process of building a conversion in their Salt Lake City plant, and they're ready to sell it with they have a partner, I forget their name, that is licensing the chemical, but it's commercially ready and ready to go. And so the refineries are not willing to take that, our refinery here is not willing to take that commercial risk that Chevron is taking that commercial risk by converting a plant, and they're externalizing that risk to the community. So it's now a question of dollars. Will the refinery pay the dollars to make this conversion because it's available? And there were several other chemicals presented as alternatives also. So I think the challenge for the council now, which voted previously to support the efforts of the AQMD, to step that up and support a motion to ban HF and MHF from our community, and to call upon a short timeline for this phase out, because the next question will be, seems to be determined that the rule will be made to phase out. We need to make that phase out as short as possible for the safety of the community. Thank you.
Antoine Shirk.
I'm Anthony Churg, and I want to just make a brief comment because my previous comments were included in the record for this workshop. I really feel that the community does not see that the safety and membership of the community are protected from accidents at this refinery. And there is a cynicism about the kind of everything is hunky-dory kind of report that we're seeing, that everything is rolling along well. two federal agencies came up with damning reports on what has happened at this refinery. And now we're being told that everything is just moving along well. And now the refinery wants to instead of somehow recycling the hydrogen, they want to send it up and make a Hindenburg Zeppelin effect over the city. So I really have a strong mistrust for what is being said here, and I hope that the kind of skepticism that Councilman Goodrich offered about the alerts will be considered much more seriously. Thank you very much.
The next three, G. Eng, Tom Newman, David Boulay.
Hi, this is Dr. Gangmaning, 5215 the North Street, Torrance, California. I put up some paper for all you people, and the title's Who's Telling the Truth? The problems, the published literature found by many independent citizens is increasingly divergent from the models and assumptions that have been used by the Torrance City Council and Torrance City staff to assess the public health and safety of MHF. And, I think it's sad that I have to ask a question that somebody, who is telling the truth? There should not be a divergence of such a increasing divergence, because that means that certain facts are either hidden or are not studied to help come to a community consensus on what the truth is. On page 2, on 228, the city of Torrance said the consent decree said that MHF must be safer than sulfuric acid. And there's just so many ways to do that calculation, and the numbers that have been given by the refinery keep on getting more and more bigger every time they look at the answer. HF becomes safer and safer, so you wonder how come it was so less safe the first time. So that makes the community suspicious. TRAA said that the consent decree said Mobil must stop using HF unless a safe MHF could be developed that would not form an aerosol or a dense vapor cloud. That's a very different criterion. And so, the consent decree, you guys should be able to give the community something that says, here is the language, and which one, what is the truth, what does the consent decree actually say, so that we can converge from these diverging opinions, because the divergence is getting large. On page 2, of course, thank you, Sally Hayati. This is this is what a large HF cloud looks like, and the damage it did to the community. On page 3, this is the thing that's the most shocking development for me for the past year, is that we don't know exactly what is being used at the refinery. We don't know what the MHF is actually made out of. We don't know how safe it is, but if the criteria indeed is that MHF does not form a vapor cloud, on 5/17, the Daily Breeze reported that there was what was considered a small HF leak that actually went on for hours, and that a white vapor cloud over 2 hours was released. And so what I ask is, doesn't that article actually prove that whatever additive it is, I don't care how you count it, it does not prevent a cloud from forming and an aerosol from forming? In that sense, it doesn't do its job. That's why it's so important for the community to really have a definitive measure of what the consent decree says. Next, what is the Torrance Police Department's planned response to an HF cloud? Are they just going to cordon off the zone of death and injury? And if they do, what if the cloud moves in their direction? They have to now keep on a moving boundary to keep people safe while the interior zone is keeping people injured and dead. And how are they going to know? Will they have protective gear? Will they have monitors for HF? What's the fire department going to do? The same questions go to them. We don't see, at least I certainly don't see, how an NHF disaster can be effectively managed. And the whole point is that we hear about these ARF values, these air reduction factors, and they obey the legal limits, and we love to see the calculations. But no matter what the legal limits are, what you're going to do, because we now have a report of a real cloud forming, so what you're going to do with a cloud, we need to know. What should we do in a cloud? As Chairman Burke said of the AQMD, shelter in place with a cloud, how does that work? No, it ain't going to work. And that's the chairman of the AQMD. That you can see why we're worried. And that's why, you know, so many agencies have come and said, no, HF is not safe. You know, I certainly want to encourage the city council to get on board and reconsider the original motion of Councilman Goodrich and Wiedemann. There's got to become a time where the city council can proudly say, yes, we support what everybody else is doing and the safety of the people, and to vote to support the ban on MHF. The next page, you know, this is what was said on 228 by our city. With respect to the additive, a little goes a long way. And well, on the next page, TRAA said, well, look, the additive keeps on going down all the way from 50% by weight, not by moles, it can do the calculation, to 30%, to 10%. PBF on April 1 said the additive could be low as 8%. And then their representative Adam Webb on 19th at the working group said it could be as low as 7%. So, you know, what is allowed? It keeps on going down and down, that, you know, a little bit goes a long way, but on the next page, I actually, this is what the patent says. And there, we're down at 7.36%, and it's a 5.985% vapor suppression from 1086 torr to 1021 torr. So a little does not go a long way. So I don't understand how the city of Torrance could have said a little goes a long way. It doesn't have to be linear. It just, you know, it doesn't go that long. It's not 7. It's worse. It's 5.9. So, and then I asked at a prior city council meeting when the fire department said, oh yeah, all the legal requirements for the ARF consent decree are being met, but we're not going to tell you what it is because of proprietary nature. Well, you can just tell us what the calculation is. You don't have to disclose, you know, which piece of proprietary MHF is doing this. And I asked that the fire department could do 2 calculations, one with their standard, whatever it is, MHF, plus whatever it is else, and then go and take that same calculation and put pure HF in, which is what it used to be, and see how different the numbers are, and tell everybody in the public, and it's not going to be much different numbers. But I think they should do the calculation and at least even see for themselves that if they believe it's going to be real different, I mean, you're firefighters, you're the greatest. Do it, find out the truth. You always need to know ground truth before your people go in and do anything. And so my conclusion is that I think the formation of the white vapor cloud is definitive. MHF doesn't work the way to keep us safe like what it should, no matter what calculation you do. And we keep on getting a story that says that it's less and less safe, and where is it that it's okay? It does mean that it's a persistent threat. We will all support the Rule 1410 change, and we would all love our city government to say, yes, we're on board with it, and please, you know, everybody else says, why isn't the Torrance City Council on board with this? What does the City Council know that the US EPA doesn't know and the AQMD doesn't know that supports their reluctance to support the Rule 1410 ban? And I actually wonder that maybe it's because of the language that you've seen, the calculations are inconsistent. If you ask for the calculations, it will help to resolve things. It will help maybe even teach you and everybody else what ground truth is so that you can make a more informed decision. And I think when if you were to do these calculations or have somebody do them, you would all see that there has been a lot of misinformation, and that once you have a ground truth, I think you will support a new Rule 1410, and the citizens of Torrance will be very proud of their city officials to say, yes, you're trying to help. And that's my last thing, that we are hoping the city officials, the fire department, the police department, and our council and our mayor, honorable mayor, will work harder to actually reconsider supporting Rule 1410. Thank you very much.
Yes, my name is Tom Newman. I'm concerned about the Torrance alerts. By simply moving it from the police department to the business office at Torrance, we have a little bit of a problem because what we're doing is redefining what is an important public safety announcement and ramping it down so the public is not informed. It'd be as if we had a tobacco problem in this country and the tobacco industry was saying, not a problem, not a problem. Secondhand smoke is not a problem. We would never have the labels on cigarettes that identify the danger. The public needs to know. The Torrance alerts needs to work. The adoption of the rule that allowed them to redefine what is dangerous is purely bogus. Now, I realize that, people have different opinions, but we all know that smog is bad. We all want clean air. The notices should go out, and it shouldn't be something where you have to opt into Facebook, opt into Twitter. It should come right up there on your smartphone, right up there on your computer screen, easily accessible, so that we all have a safer environment. So there you have it. And as far as the shelter in place, I don't know how many people can crawl up under their roof and seal their roof vents when an emergency notice goes out. So if you want a shelter in place, get the body bags now and just zip it up. We don't have too many steps between being aware of what's happening in the air and certain death. The body bag might be a good resort. Thank you.
David Boulay.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is David Boulay. I'm a 24-year resident of Torrance. My wife, Marcia, was born here, and our son attended Torrance schools and also lives in Torrance. Torrance is a well-run city with professional, dedicated, responsive employees from police and fire to the library and to those who work at City Hall. And Torrance enjoys a committed and hardworking city council. But when it comes to oversight and protection of Torrance and its residents from the biggest danger they face, the Torrance Refinery's use of MHF, the city government is confusingly placid. The human devastation that would be caused by a leak of MHF has been well documented. Another important issue is the economic devastation that the city would experience with a leak of MHF. Real estate values would plummet, visitors to the mall would decrease, businesses might flee, tax revenue would fall. It may be fine to hope for the best, but I urge you to do more to plan for the worst, including pass a city resolution in favor of a ban on MHF in California, advocate with city lawmakers for AB 1645 and the Southern California AQMD Rule 1410, practice MHF emergency drills in malls, hospitals, playing fields, schools, residential areas, and vigorously work with surrounding members of the state and the AQMD to improve the siren and warning systems. Thank you.
Every time the applause, it slows everything up, and we only have an infinite amount of time to do this. So I would appreciate if you don't do it. We recognize you like their, whatever they're saying. Raise your hands up like this, quietly, so that the next person can come up, and I don't have to do this and waste time. Thank you.
The next three, Donna Heiss, Craig Kessler, Margaret O'Regan.
Good morning. I want to thank the City of Torrance and the City Council for having this informative workshop. The packet of information, as always, is very instructive. I've got some suggestions about the emergency preparedness program in the city, and this would be for all emergencies, not just chemical. I want to thank the fire department, first of all, for their CERT and BERT classes. They're excellent. The biggest piece of news for me is the reformation of the South Bay CARE program. CARE stands for Community Awareness and Emergency Response. I was involved with the Beach Cities CARE program in the 1990s, and they provided a lot of information and education for the schools and for the community. I'm really glad to see that going on, and I'd be willing to help and participate in that if asked. The city, thank you for working on the Torrance Alerts program. I think we still have a lot of work to do, but I'm encouraged. I want to encourage the City Council to reinstate the Disaster Volunteers Commission. It was disbanded a few years ago, and I think we're at the point now in the city where we're ramping up the disaster preparedness aspect of the city. We need that commission again. So please consider that. The police department, I would like to encourage two things for you. For one, you had a disaster volunteer coordinator years ago, Torrance Condon, and she had a really long title, which I could never remember, but she was a civilian employee of the police department who coordinated with the city, the citizens, and the school district. And I was involved with her in the disaster volunteer program, which was primarily between the citizens and the school district. And we did a lot to prepare emergency response for the schools. And I know the school is separate from the city, but they're both contained in the same area, and I feel it's really important for both to work together. The other thing with the police department, please reconsider your working relationship with Torrance Amateur Radio Association. Redundancy is important. I know that we all think that the cell phone is going to be great for everything, but in the case of an earthquake, we could lose cell towers, and if you ask a telephone transmission engineer, we may be overloaded with cell phones. So your cell phones may not work. In the 1990s, we had Terra were members of the Disaster Volunteer Program. They, with their own funds, put antennas in each school district, and there was a Torrance Amateur Radio volunteer assigned to each school to go out and inspect and to broadcast from that school site if necessary. All these things were in place in the 90s, and somehow they have disappeared. I think we can do that and more. Now we have a TV station. You can broadcast all kinds of information and public training on that. And I have to say one thing about shelter in place. It does work. And in a chemical emergency, it may be the only thing between walking out into the chemical cloud and staying in your house. Which would you rather do? Thank you.
Your Honor, members of the council, my name is Craig Kessler. I'm a resident of the city of Torrance. I'm speaking for myself and only myself here today. Earlier this year, I issued a very definite challenge to this council to get involved, to take a position. And you did. You may not have taken the stronger of the two positions that I would have preferred, but you took a position nonetheless. And that was to support an objective, scientific, third-party analysis of all the issues. That's going on right now at the AQMD, and I want to reiterate my thanks and appreciation to this council for having supported it at this time, and I think you're watching along with me as that process unfolds. Some very interesting things are coming to light, and I'm sure between now and the end of the year, even more interesting and dispositive things will come to light, and I will engage in it. Again, thank you. I'm sure you'll hear from me again in the future, but today, not so much, mercifully. Thanks.
Margaret O'Regan, a resident of Torrance for over 30 years. I was busy working and kind of unaware of what was going on, but I experienced the fallout in 2015, and it made me acutely aware. I want to thank the community groups such as TRAA, Torrance Refinery Action Alliance, for educating me as to the dangers. I also hope that the legislation moves forward to ban modified hydrofluoric acid. My concern is we have the threat of an imminent large earthquake, and if we don't get the refinery in a safer condition, I will be one of the people in the gaseous cloud. I would like to continue living in Torrance, but this issue is making me wonder maybe I should move. And last but not least, I don't understand the political clout the coyotes have in town, but they will also be affected by this cloud if it is released. Thank you.
Your Honor. Your Honor, we've reached 30 minutes.
Well, we have, I had a goal of 11 o'clock, so why don't we continue to 11 o'clock, and then more people can speak.
The next three speakers are Julie Stoll, Cindy Anuli, and Seth Kaufman.
Hello, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, everyone else. My name is Julie Stoll, and first of all, I want to thank you for having this workshop. I want to thank you so much for having it in the morning instead of the late night City Council meeting. Those are torturous for me, being that I'm a morning person.
Some of us.
I am a Torrance teacher, and each person that's come up here has offered their unique perspective. And I feel as a teacher, I have a unique perspective as well. And that is that I see at 3 o'clock every day just how packed the roads are, the sidewalks, the roads, the lawns, when students get out of school. There are so many students around. And as I gear up for back to school, that's on my mind. How many students are around? How many students are outside? If there were an MHF release, and if that happened at 3 o'clock, it would be absolutely catastrophic. I think there are people that can speak more eloquently than I can about the dangers of MHF. As a previous speaker said, those are well documented, but I really just want to call your attention to how many schools we have in the area, how many schools are near the refinery, and how many kids would be affected by an MHF release. This is something that we need to address. I really want to thank the AQMD, and I really want to encourage everyone, including the City Council, to support Rule 1410 so that we can ban MHF. This has absolutely no place in our community. I would also like to mention that I am a member of TRAA. I want to thank so much Dr. Sally Hayati and all of the members of that group who dedicate their time for no other reason just than the fact that they're concerned about public safety. And we do meet TRAA the first and third Monday of every month, and our website is www.safetorrancerefinery.org. And the last thing that I want to mention is in regards to the notification system. I personally would like to have a notification every time there's a flare. And the reason for that is that MHF is constantly on my mind. If there is a flare and it takes place in the alkylation unit, I want to know about it. If I'm teaching, I want to be able to have in mind what I can do to try to protect my students. And so for what it's worth, I would like to know about every flare. If that's something the city is not going to be able to do, I think that we should widely advertise the AQMD notification system, because I feel the Torrance Alerts has been well advertised. Many people know about it, have signed up for it, and the AQMD alerts I don't get personally. So that's it. My comments are also brief today. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Anuli. Thank you, City Council, for having this workshop. I've been looking forward to getting an update on what's been going on. But standing here and sitting here listening to everyone talk this morning, it's just unfathomable to me how we're now 2.5 years after near catastrophic incident that we're still talking about, it seems, the same things. I mean, you see some improvement, but we're still debating whether, when we're going to have the fence line monitors, and if, MHF is still dangerous. What about the alternatives? So that to me is inexplicable why that is still being discussed. I actually live one house in from 190th, right by the entrance to the refinery, and I know. Pardon me?
Nice block.
Yeah, Pat lives on my block. We just had a get-together this week with the police department. But I noticed just recently with this turnaround, the last few months, I noticed that I was having burning in my throat. My lungs were really tight, and I work out like 4 or 5 times a week. I had to stop that. I went to my doctor. They couldn't, it's not a cold or anything. I told them I live near the refinery, and it's not like they can say, oh, it's due to pollution or the refinery. But I lived with it. I stopped working out. I noticed the last couple of weeks, I didn't know when their turnaround ended, but that it's kind of subsided. I'm back to working out, so I'm happy about that. The noise during the turnaround was really loud, especially in the evenings, in the early morning, really hard to sleep. So that's really unpleasant. And with the air monitoring, it seems like I know we have you're doing an RFP and things like that to get monitors around with that group. I know I asked cleanair.org at one of, there was a fundraiser with TRAA and Flare, and they had a wireless monitor that they came and put on my porch probably in about 10 or 15 minutes. So it's real-time monitoring 24/7, and I go to a website and I can see what's going on any day, any time. So just curious what's taking so long with getting something similar around the borders of the refinery that everyone that lives near it can go online and look. How long is that going to take when someone from cleanair.org can come out in 10 minutes and put it on my porch for free, in fact? I want MHF banned. One of my coworkers, I actually work on the other side of the refinery for Rapiscan Systems, and one of my coworkers' husband was a manager of one of the groups that would go into mobile refinery during the emergencies. Everyone else would leave, his team would come in, and they were there in 2015 and all the incidences after. He moved to Salt Lake City and is working at the refinery there, which is much nicer. He had nothing good to say about the mobile refinery. It was unmaintained, unsafe, and so that really concerned me that an employee from there is that concerned about what's going on. I think that's about it. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Hi, my name is Seth Kaufman. I'm a Torrance resident. When we first got here today, we heard some testimony from the refinery, and I just wrote down a couple of quotes that I thought were really compelling. We're a really good neighbor. It's a really good thing. It's a really good thing. And I think you were referring to the YMCA program, science projects. I'm just wondering, like some projected science projects may have something to do with what MHF does to the skin, like with lab rats. Maybe, so it's in a safe environment. What does the releases of toxins from your flares, what does it do to the lungs? Show kids. That might be a nice thing to show. It's a really good thing as a really good neighbor. I don't know how you guys can sit here and listen to the testimony of experts from the community and remain inactive. I don't know how that's possible. You hear what the risks are. You hear what the challenges are. And yet there's nothing being done, nothing really being done to protect us. At one of the last meetings, Mayor, one of your constituents testified that they were going door to door and that people were really concerned. And your summation, your response to him was, well, anybody can scare people. With the perspective of somebody who thinks that their constituents are being salacious, that their constituents are being hysterical, I don't know how we can rely on you to support the kind of testimony that you've heard here today, to protect the interests of the people that you have been in charge to support. Well, anybody, that's a quote, well, anybody can scare people. Well, Sally, maybe you came up here today intentionally to scare people. Maybe that's how you hear her testimony. Is it? We see the representatives of the refinery. As soon as people started testifying, we saw you skittish, moving around, getting up, walking around. Didn't see you at the last meeting at the Hyatt, did we? When the AQMD was here going, yeah, we're not coming down in your favor. You didn't show up. Here, today, you show up in your blue shirts, pretty blue, sky blue. Not unironic, if that's a word, that it's the same blue as the AQMD banner. Purity, decency, clean air, wholesomeness. That's what you represent? That's a really good neighbor. That's what we've got before us here, folks. They're not showing up for us. They're not a really good neighbor. I would like to see a list of where the money goes. Where does the money go? There can be no other explanation. Certainly, not one that you can justifiably ignore. Prove it. Where does the money go? Science programs, kids, YMCA, wholesome. Who's getting lubed in the city? Who's getting greased? What programs are we afraid to let go of? People say on social media, oh, but what about the education programs? What about the revenue that the refinery brings in? When there's a catastrophic release, are you going to stick around? Are you? Are you going to be here? Are you going to help clean up? Are you going to help restore? Is the money going to keep flowing? Are you going to go belly up and be out the door? Thank you.
Actually, the last person who stood up, you're not going to be heard today, okay? Yeah. I'm going to stop right there with that last gentleman with the blue shirt. That's when we're cutting it off. because we've given up way more time than we said we were going to do. So I have 4 people up there, okay? Come on, lady, ma'am, tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Sandra Cartier.
Could you pull the microphone down?
I thought they were
It's not your
untouchable.
fault.
My name is Sandra Cartier. I live in the county strip. And since the air does not know where Torrance ends and the rest of the South Bay begins, we feel we need a stake in this party. And I basically have my bent on preparedness. And as a retired healthcare worker, you cannot be too prepared. It is gospel in the industry. You have to depend on your muscle memory, not going back to your manuals and looking up, oh yeah, what is the next step? Are we going to launch this thing or not? And since we are living now with this danger, we can't count on anything in the near future to change. So indefinitely, we have to be prepared. It is imperative that Cal OES adds MHF to its list of toxic substances. It is invisible. Because it's proprietary, they don't have to. So, the city doesn't know, if they choose not to, how to prepare. Why? It's not on the list. We're off the hook, no liability. The city needs to demand this. The meeting is this Wednesday, August 9th, in Irwindale. I'm sure OES would be glad to have you come. They have a public comment section. They also have a website you can watch online and call in. If anyone else feels they have something to contribute to OES, so they do add this chemical to the list, and it's published in our records in California, please call. Our readiness could save lives. The next release, if it happens and when, we just need to know. Get out of the air. Seal yourself into something. Your car might not be safe, your house might be better. Underground in a sealed vault like we had in the 50s when I grew up for atom bomb preparedness was the best you could get. So maybe we need to start digging. Our residents in all of South Bay, with all our mayors, all our communities, all our schools, clear up to downtown LA and over to Seal Beach, need to think about this readiness. We need to get the kids involved, the scouts, the libraries, and definitely the hospitals, industry, all the city employees participate in these drills. It should be part of your compliance. Every year, you have to take those record-keeping documents, get it in there. The Cal OES would be empowered then, if this were on their list, to have the hazmat teams prepare by law. Right now, they're not. They would just take the information, the incident has happened, they would call the National Registry, who helped out in 9/11, and say, what are we dealing with here? It's up in the air, all the refinery people are too busy to call us, what's going on? So, when they finally get around to getting here, which might be a couple of days later, the hospitals will be incapacitated on some level, depending on where the wind is blowing. And by the way, they don't keep calcium gluconate prepared to put on you or in your eyes. You're going to have to wait. In the meantime, you're in the parking lot. Maybe they might be able to douse you down, but you're going to wait. And they're not going to admit you because they don't know what you're all about. You're just going to be starting to melt. Maybe not visibly, but internally. So basically, I have an invitation. Get in touch with Cal OES. Watch their website Wednesday morning. The meeting starts at 10, and it's due to last at least till noon. And the public comments section is very small, so you better keep it short and sweet. It's 5 minutes for everybody. I mean, just the total length of time you'll have to contribute, whether there's 10 or none of you, it's 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Hannum. I'd like to thank the Council for holding this workshop this morning and for extending the comment period. And this period is also intended for use as questions. And During your presentation, Deputy Chief DeMay, you mentioned that the fire department was working with the city attorneys to make the consent decree into a more livable document. I would like to ask this question. What are the goals of the City of Torrance for making the consent decree a more livable document? And also, if Mr. Steach or another representative from the refinery would care to comment, what are the refinery's goals for making the consent decree a more livable document? Thank you very much. And as long as I'm up here, I strongly favor a ban of MHF at the refinery.
Betsy Bryan.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor and Council and the audience. I appreciate you holding this forum today and being here this morning to listen to everyone's comments. Somebody stated earlier about the refinery and how long we would be here. The refinery has been here since 1929. It was one of the first businesses to open in the community, and we've been very proud to be here for that long a period, and we plan on being here much longer. We have approximately 600 employees that work with us and 400 contractors, and a lot of them live in the community. They send their kids to school here. They attend ballet and Little League, and yes, they go to the YMCA, and we support a lot of these programs for all of the students in the community, along with supporting the TUSD. There were also a lot of comments made today on behalf of agencies and others that aren't here to speak for themselves. Chairwoman Vanessa Sutherland sent in a letter via email to the Honorable Mayor yesterday, and she copied Sally Hayati and me. And I would like to read one of the statements that she wrote in here, which are her words. The CSB does not make recommendations to prohibit or restrict the use of specific chemicals within industries we investigate, but rather analyzes the safe storage and handling of chemicals and the mitigation of the risk associated with their use. And I think that's a very powerful statement with all the other statements that were said today. They do not make recommendations to prohibit or restrict the use of chemicals within the industries that they investigate. So along with that, it was also stated with different refineries that either were sulfuric acid or HF. And I'd like to remind the community, the alkylation methods are selected at the time when a refinery is built. So currently in the US, there are approximately 50 HF/MHF refineries and 40 sulfuric acid refineries. There have been no refineries that have switched anywhere in the world. Around the world, there's approximately 112 HF facilities. Of those 112 facilities, the approximate use of HF in the refining industry is less than 2%. So the refinery industry makes up less than 2% of the HF. There's a lot of HF in our cell phones, in the TVs, and everything that we're doing, HF is used. It is a very important chemical to our everyday lives. Our refrigerators, the basis of some of the information, of the compounds that are used in there, and our cars and airplanes and everything that we do. Also, it was mentioned in regards to Chevron, they're switching their refinery in Utah, which is an HF facility, to another substance. It's called liquid ionics. And Chevron gave a wonderful presentation the other day on their liquid ionics technology. And what they said, it is commercially available. It is, so what they're saying there is they will sell it to anybody that wants to purchase it. It is not yet commercially proven, and they have said that. The unit has not been built yet. They are only ordering the materials for the unit right now. They're just receiving the permits for it. So this chemical that this compound which they've been using, or working on for approximately 20 years, they do have some pilot plants and they look promising, and we're looking at it and we're following the data that they're providing, which does hopefully look promising. But we have to realize that this has not been proven yet. So I thank you for your time.
All right, I'll keep this short so we can all get out of here. My name's Adam Webb. I'm the Torrance Refinery representative on the Rule 1410 Working Group. And I just wanted to make sure some of the information that's been shared here today was clear. We continue to work with, as the refinery, the working group members, The city representatives on the working group and the community members closely with the AQMD to move this rulemaking forward. There has not been any preliminary rule language put out as of yet. The AQMD is still formulating their preliminary rule concepts. We continue to provide them data and research as to the efficacy of MHF that was done in the 90s by the developers of the technology. We continue to get permission from the licensor and owner of the technology, UOP, to share data with the AQMD for their continued study and look at the science behind the technology. So we look forward to continuing working with the AQMD and the working group members as this process goes along and continuing to provide them the information they need to make the correct decision. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes today, but before we go, I just wanted to make a brief statement, and that's, Dr. Eng, you put up here who is telling the truth. And, you know, that's what the AQMD is really tasked with at the present time. For 2 years, more than 2 years, we have been explaining that the city of Torrance has a very limited ability to regulate chemicals. Interestingly enough, the United States Chemical Safety Board apparently has chimed in today, say that they cannot regulate chemicals. I don't know why you would think that a city council comprised of members of your community, none of which are scientists with expertise in any field related to the refinery or chemicals, would be in a position to be able to make a decision based upon rhetorical statements, attacks, hearsay. I've had someone tell us what the AQMD is doing. Dr. Fine from the AQMD was here. He could have told me what the AQMD was doing, but he's not. He didn't tell us those things. So we were waiting for the AQMD. We're cooperating with the AQMD. We did a resolution saying we support the AQMD in their efforts to look at empirical data and real science to come back with a rule to cover this. We're not the experts in airborne particulates, which is one of the reasons we're really concerned with Torrance alerts, sort of like the sky is falling. That's what I'm hearing. I know everybody in this room wants to get Torrance alerts. I get an awful lot of telephone calls, text messages, and emails telling me they're really tired of getting them when there's an alert. They want to know what it's about. And just telling them that there's an alert, and that doesn't help. Some people have said, here, you want information. We had information that you weren't supposed to burn wood in your fireplace, and that came from the AQMD, and I could still smell the little chill in the air. People were putting wood in their fireplace, and that was hurting our environment, hurting the air, putting airborne particulates out there. So, and that's your neighbor, your person down the street around the corner. I'm very pleased the AQMD took up with this. We support everything they're doing. We will provide them with manpower, information, documentation, whatever they need, and we're continuing to do that so that they can come to the right decision. Who is telling the truth? That's their job. They're going to figure out who's telling the truth. Everybody's telling the truth, I know, from their perspective. And perspectives are not evidence as far as I'm concerned. No, you know, it's not for us to do, it's not for you to do. You're not the expert on that. You may be a rocket scientist, somebody else may be a scientist. I'm a lawyer, but tell me, I'm not a lawyer for all purposes, and you're not a scientist for all purposes, and they're not a scientist for all purposes. Doctors, you don't go to a pediatrician to have oncology work. So it's a bad analogy, but you don't go to a divorce lawyer in a litigation case. So I'm leaving with the experts. The South Coast Air Quality Management District is charged with that, and we support what their efforts are, and whatever it is, we're going to go with it. And that's where the argument is. They're doing the hearings, and we're looking forward to that. Any colleague questions or comments? Councilmember Wiedemann.
Yes, I actually have something very quick, and it's a question to Mr. Smith for the next September 19th meeting, and I'll just make a statement. You know, on the when we do a ambulance contract, we have to ensure that the ambulances arrive within 5 minutes, 80% of the time, or something like that. Could we have evidence of the lag time between the fire department saying, hit the button, a call to action, and the time it takes that to hit my cell phone? And I know you're doing the training, so I was hoping that maybe you could give that evidence to us on September 19th.
We certainly will.
Thank you much. That's all I asked.
Great suggestion. Councilmember Hurry?
Mayor, thank you. There was a question about a report that Chief Dumais gave on the consent decree. I'm not sure that he said something about making it a more livable document. And I would like you to clarify that if in fact that is what you said.
Yes, Councilman, that's the intention. The consent decree was put together in the 90s. Some things have been finalized. Current practices need to be solidified into an agreement. Right now, it's a few documents that are shared with Refinery in the city. What we'd like to do is put all that information together in a living document that we can agree through attorneys, because that's where we live, to modify or change any future practices, but maintain everything that we've had from the beginning. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Then I will, if there's nothing else, then I'll entertain an adjournment to September 19th at 5 o'clock for this workshop.
Your Honor, I move that we adjourn this meeting to September 19th, 5 p.m. in the City Council chambers.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposition? Hearing none? So ordered.